How many times have you said yes to something and immediately regretted it? I think that is a very common thing, especially with women, because oftentimes growing up, we're taught to behave, be quiet, sit still, follow the rules. So, when we try to say no to something, sometimes it feels really uncomfortable and people tend to avoid it.
This episode of Shrinks on Tap is brought to you by Kava Haven, the first non-alcoholic spirit you can actually feel, made without added sugars. Enjoy the ritual of a drink without the effects of alcohol, so you can unwind and stay fully present.
Welcome back. I'm Dr. Lauren Fisher.
I'm Dr. Eleni Boussalis.
And today we're talking about the power of no and how that one word can change your daily life significantly. We're going to explain that in a minute, but before we do that, we're going to talk about our drink. I'm excited about the drink today. Speaking about saying no, a lot more people are saying no to alcohol these days for health reasons. I do love drinking alcohol, but I am looking for other alternatives, especially as women. We get into our 40s and 50s, just affects our body differently. So I'm excited to share with you today Kava Haven. So I came across this on the internet and it intrigued me. First of all, the owners, small business owned company out of Chicago, and they said that they went on a cleanse. I don't know if you've ever gone on a cleanse of any sort, but when you do that, you often have better energy and mental clarity. And so they had done a 75-day cleanse. And what they report, when I read an article, was that, they're like, they felt good. And they're like, what if we changed, the way in which we go about drinking, but we want to find something that satisfies us. And they had difficulty finding like a non-alcoholic drink that gave them the feelings of like relaxation and calm. So someone in Fiji told them about kava, which is a plant that has been used in ceremonies, which we love, for thousands of years. And it helps to reduce or induce a little bit of calm, ease, and relaxation, a lot of the benefits you get from drinking. So the kava root is pretty bitter, so they've gone ahead and mixed it with a couple different things, ginger, white grape, citrus. They'll finally tasted good enough. So we have used theirs, and per their recommendation, mixed it with some ginger beer. So let's go ahead and take a sip now.
Okay. I like the ginger. You could taste the ginger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I actually already had a couple sips, and I do feel some mood relaxation because I do get that. That's important. And I think the other thing I really like about their brand is just talking about the mindset shift, that like, hey, we can still have a good time, be out, be social, but also be healthy with our bodies. And that gets us to our topic today, because we're going to talk all about shifting the ways in which we go about things, because a lot of us say yes to things. So I'm going to let you start.
So how many times have you said yes to something and immediately regretted it? I think that is a very common thing, especially with women, because oftentimes growing up, we're taught to behave, be quiet, sit still, follow the rules. So, when we try to say no to something, sometimes it feels really uncomfortable and people tend to avoid it. At least what we hear in therapy. That's a big topic in therapy, wanting to say no, but it's too hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that I too have been a recovering people pleaser. I think that's what the term we're more familiar with. But it's where we do say yes to many things, and then we're like, ugh, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go to that dinner, or I did something, but I didn't have time or energy for that. And so I think you bring up this point, right, in which we're going to get into like why people do that. But the conditioning is a big thing. The societal and family. Be a good boy and girl, right? Don't say anything. Don't create a fuss. Respect your elders, even if they're treating you like shit, right?
Yeah.
So we grow up with this conditioning, but even more so women, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're built to connect and to survive. So if, saying no subconsciously threatens our feeling of connection or our risk of disapproval or perhaps it can feel threatening and bring up anxiety or guilt, or like, I'm not a good daughter, or I'm not a good friend, fear of rejection. So there's reasons why it's so hard to do this. Like, one of the things I say a lot to my clients in therapy is, you are choosing to be uncomfortable in the short term when you say no, but more comfortable in the long term. Because what happens is people say yes to be comfortable in the short term, but then in the long term, they're really uncomfortable. And that leads to anxiety and, bitter feeling, and also burnout, because it's stress on the body.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing.
I was listening to something that Gabor Mate said, and he said, nice people worry him. And he said, some people, what you said, I just want to re-emphasize that they gave up their authenticity to survive in order to be liked, accepted, and then they carried that pattern on for the rest of their lives. And a lot of times that's why we see this people-pleasing pattern in adulthood, even if they don't need to do it anymore. It's just how they've been conditioned. They've been conditioned to abandon themselves. So where's that line of being nice? He's like, well, being nice is a good thing when we can be grounded and we're doing nice things in a compassionate way, but we're not losing ourselves. He's like, but when you start abandoning yourself and you're echoing everyone else's needs and not actually paying attention to your needs or consulting with yourself, that's where this pattern happens. So authenticity is kind of viewed as dangerous subconsciously, because if I'm authentic, if I'm who I am, people may not like that,
Yeah, and essentially what you're saying to yourself, right, is that you're not as important as they are, or like your needs aren't as important as their desires. So it's like a shift in perspective, in that when I take care of myself and honor my needs, then, I'm a better person, I'm more balanced, I'm more authentic. So it's, but like I said, it's difficult. So how do we get past that? Like, how do you push past that?
Well, I'm sure you hear this, but when people decide or recognize they're people pleasing, they want to change, when they start shifting, they feel like they're being selfish, and they are actually, but the right kind of selfish, but it feels a certain way. So your question was, how do we change it? Right. So we have to recognize, right, that we're people pleasing. And what are the signs? Irritability, resentment, feeling burnt out, stressed.
Yeah. And like noticing how much you're complaining about it. Like that happens a lot, where people are, I can't believe she asked me to do that. And I said yes. And now it's so, and they're just going on and on in their head about saying yes to something and being so mad at the person who asked them. Where it's like, they just asked you a question. You decided to say yes. That is so common. Right.
Yeah, I felt that there's a point where I was joining so many different boards and organizations outside of even my general work. And I was like, oh, I can't believe they keep asking me to do all these things. But I chose to be there, I chose to do that because I thought I had to, but I made the choice to be there, to do those things. But at the time I wasn't making those choices with what was in alignment with me. I was doing what I thought I needed to do as a leader and so on. So
So if you find yourself doing this a lot, I went through this process as well, where I was like, okay, what are you actually afraid of if you say no? Like, what's the fear under there? And people usually say, fear of abandonment or rejection or letting people down, that kind of thing. So it's like getting underneath that and noticing what is driving this, and then challenging it, because, that's the only way through this.
Yeah, and if you're relying on people pleasing and external validation, you're diminishing your self-worth, and you're losing trust in yourself and really knowing who you are and what is your positive things, because your inner voice is saying one thing, but your actions are saying something else. And people tend to struggle with indecisiveness too.
Yeah. So what happens when you say no is, it's true, your nervous system does actually spike, your heart rate goes up, you do feel anxiety, the sympathetic nervous system gets triggered. That's a real thing, because you're essentially like in a little mini fight or flight. Like, I'm not safe saying no. So people are like, well, then this must mean I'm doing the wrong thing. If I'm feeling this spike in my nervous system, my mouth is dry, my heart is racing. So I must be doing the wrong thing. But that's not necessarily an indication that you're doing the wrong thing, right? That's an indication that you're in fight or flight because you're afraid of fill in the blank.
Well, and I think that's where you might get more automatic thoughts like, oh, I'm not being a good daughter, or I'm a bad wife, or not a good friend, right? So it comes with that. But feeling guilty is evidence of healing, and our job is to practice tolerating that discomfort. That we are going to feel some guilt, fear, or anxiety when we're shifting patterns. It's a sign of breaking a habit because you're rewiring. And every time you resist the urge to give more than you get or to hold a boundary, you're teaching yourself that self-respect is safe. So you matter just as much as they do. So you're rewiring that safety, but it is a bit uncomfortable. So if you can remember that, there'll be on the other side, and I think you'll talk about this, what we notice when we do value our needs. What do we then feel?
Yeah, then you feel alignment. Then you feel a sense of relief and freedom, but you have to get through the hump of the initial anxiety to feel that freedom, to feel that relief. And then to, baby steps, I would say baby steps to create your new norm. And after a while that, like I always talk about the critical mass, when you have a critical mass of experiences where you've said no and you've survived, right? And your body's like, oh, I survived and now I have more time to myself and I have more I'm engaged more in activities I actually want to do with people I actually want to be with. Then you notice that freedom and then it starts to build and then that becomes your new norm. And it's interesting, like recently I was pondering on this, that I had asked someone for something. I can't remember, it was a favor and they said yes. And then I was thinking like, did they actually want to do that? And I thought, well, I asked them, they could say no if they want to say no. Like it's not so. Now I feel like I'm approaching people, or I'm having conversations with people thinking that they're in this spot where if they want to say no, they're going to say no. And if they say yes, they actually mean yes. Yeah. But a lot of people aren't actually like that, right? No. So yeah. So it's actually also a relief. Like think of people that in your life that if you ask them something, they will tell you honestly, no, I don't want to do that. It gives me a sense of security to be around those people because I know that they're telling me the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll be honest. Like, I don't have capacity, or that isn't right for me right now, or I just can't. So it's like, and you can feel when it's genuine. And I think we really want people to be like genuine, at least personally. I would respect that more. But some people in your life may not like it that you're saying no. So the reality is those that haven't respected your boundaries are going to be pissed. So they may induce guilt, right? Or they may make you feel bad. But that's also, if that's happening, that's a really good chance to reevaluate your friendships and your relationships.
Yeah. And that brings me thinking about, with system psychology, people who do family therapy and family constellations and things like that. It's thinking that you are in a system, right? Whether you're in a system in your family or in an organization, it's all the same. And there's a homeostasis of the way things are. And in that homeostasis, that doesn't mean it's healthy, but there's power dynamics and triangulations, and there's inferior and superior and power struggles and all these things. So think about like an organization, right, where psychologists get called in to revamp an organization and make it healthier. How much that system fights. The system fights to maintain and resists and wants to stay in this maladaptive way of being. And so when somebody comes into an organization, think about at work, somebody comes in and like, we're going to change everything. Even if it's a better way of doing it, the system resists and wants to stay. It's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So it's like, how do you get over that hump where, again, the critical mass, you get enough people in this organization to buy into what you're doing and then they'll align. So, but let's say it's you and your family, you and 3 other people, and you come in and all of a sudden you're creating a new behavior and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. We don't like this. Can we go back to the way you were before?
Because we like what's familiar. That's what we know, right? But when one person shifts, everybody will shift. And I think it goes back to that, like most of the time, we're wired for connection. So the people that love you are going to shift with you. They may not like it initially, but they will. And if they're not, then
they're not meant to be there with you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the fear. It's like, what if they leave? Right. Then it's like, well, then are they really authentically your friend, or, do they want the best for you?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not about getting rid of people pleasing completely. Everything's on a continuum, right? Like being able to take care and want to help and take care of others' needs is normal. Again, it's just the coming from a genuine and connection, like a place of connection and desire to do that when it feels like right for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing I've noticed that comes up really often in therapy is this all or none thinking, where people think that either you have to be saying yes, people pleasing, or you have to be mad. They're like, oh, I have to get really mad to say no. And then it gets like crazy. And then I lose relationships and I explode. And I'm like, okay, so, right. So like you're either saying no or you're exploding. So how can we find the middle ground where you are honestly, there's an acronym I learned a long time ago, HRD, hard, which is like honest, respectful, and direct. That's like assertiveness. Assertiveness is honest, respectful, and direct. So you can be honest, respectful, and direct and say no and not be mad, not be yelling. Like how can we have that middle ground?
And I would think, the first step is like really tuning in to yourself. So when people are asking you to do things and I say the tuning in because your body is a feedback mechanism. So if someone's like, hey, do you want to go on vacation with me? And you're like, yeah, like inside your body gets excited and you're like, that's a hard yes, right? If you're like starting to go clench up and be like, I don't know, like a half or a no, like your body can tell you. So tune in, does this feel right for me? Do I want to do this? And you can buy time also, but starting to really listen to your clues or cues, because what you said before is that when it's in alignment, it feels right. And when it's not, it. And I don't even think I need to explain this because you've been in situations where you've done things you didn't want to do,
You resent it.
Yeah. And you resent it. And it's a small example, but I'll give you one. So Friday nights, a lot of my friends will go out, get together at the local bar, right? We have a lovely friend group, love doing that. But, it became like a thing, I felt like I had to go. And even with my husband, and I just be there sometimes. I never know how I'm going to feel, honestly, day to day. Some days I'm really energized. Others I'm exhausted from my work and I just want quiet. And, but I feel like I would just go because that was what was expected of me, or I didn't want people to be upset. And, but I'd sit there kind of just bitter. And I'm like, no one wants to hang out with me when I'm sitting there with my arms crossed and bitter. And so I remember it was a big thing a couple of years ago, just to be like, hey, to my husband, I'm like, I really just don't want to go. I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't want to go. And he was like, that's okay. He's like, I want you to respect what's right for you. And I don't know. It just felt, again, as a recovering people pleaser, I thought he'd be mad. And he was like, no, it's fine. So we have a really good balance now. And I've never regretted once on days where I've said I need my alone time, wind down. I've never regretted it, ever.
That's interesting that a lot of times people do expect the person is going to be upset.
Yeah.
And so many times people have told me, I said no, and actually it was fine. They were fine with it. So there's this big story that was created in their head of what was going to be wrong if they said no, and they're going to be upset, and none of that happened.
Yeah. And I think that, again, goes that past pattern, especially a lot of times it does come from childhood and parent pleasing, so how many kids were the good kid, the one that did all the things because they didn't want to upset their parents, when parents weren't able to handle their emotions. So that pleasing patterns started early, right? But you're right, a lot of the patterns we continue don't need to be happening anymore, but our minds are kind of stuck in the past. So that's why it's important to recognize it and transfer and build new safety to see the people around us do respect us and care.
Yeah. And then, so, we always talk about childhood, going along with what you just said, that it's also, I've noticed it a lot in families to avoid conflict. There's people who say, oh, we don't fight in our family. We don't talk about difficult feelings in our family. That's another sort of predictor for people pleasing, that it's difficult to understand how to process conflict or difficult feelings. And then another one that I've seen is common is this need for external validation, where a lot of times parents will, subconsciously that kids feel like their value is on the how they behave. Like they need the external validation rather than the internal alignment that I'm a good kid, right? Yeah. I'm going to be loved no matter what. It's not because I got all A's, or it's not because I scored that goal, or, and sometimes that can happen too, where people subconsciously equate that external validation that, needed to feel good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's shift to how we say no.
Yes. How do we say no? One thing that has helped me and helps people a lot is instead of just let's not go crazy and just start saying no, is I say just say let me think about that. And I think that gives you a good segue into like pondering saying no and thinking about it, and then that way you just ease into it.
Yeah, you don't give like an 8-page dissertation on why you're saying no. Because that happens a lot. People over-explain, no, I can't do this because I'm like, oh my God, that's exhausting for you. Because you feel like, right, they're going to be upset. I need to over-explain. But you actually don't need to over-explain. A simple, clear no is enough. No, thank you. I can't commit to that right now. That doesn't work for me. I need a quiet night in. I don't have capacity right now.
Yeah. I've been saying a lot lately, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. Maybe later. Because it's true. Maybe later, maybe another time. But I don't have the bandwidth right now for that.
I think that's pretty brilliant. Bandwidth or capacity, because almost everybody can like relate to that. I think we're always talking about our energy levels and stress. And so like, and I think that makes sense for people. I think it's a good one. And it's an honest one.
Yeah. Or I can do this, but not that part of that.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's a part of it I want to do, but not all of it. Let's think about that.
Yeah. And even like organizations now we're talking about, like if people are like, hey, can you do this? I'll be like, yes, I can take on this part, but not that part. So the modification, right? Like again, checking in what are you capable of, what feels right for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. So this is kind of continues to align with this some of our other podcasts about boundaries and using your voice and speaking your truth and being authentic, and how all of these things impact not just your mental health, but your physical health. So it's like a lot more, it's like thinking about this piece of your life and how this part that's so common could also be impacting you.
Yeah, because in our next episode, we're going to talk about the primal scream and somatic release. But, when your voice is stuffed and suppressed for years, even if it's you choosing to do that unconsciously, that affects you on a somatic level, on your physiological, emotional, spiritual level. Like, so there are absolute effects and costs of saying no, other than just, doing something that you didn't want to do today, because those add up, right? It accumulates over time until you feel like I have no voice. And some people really didn't have a voice at different times because they're traumatic. I mean, even women, we didn't have a voice 50 years ago. I mean, we got to vote only within the last 100 years, but just thinking about women in the workplace and, other ways, like, so some of us, are still recovering from ancestral and generational and societal,
trauma
repressions too.
Yeah. And repression. Yeah. So it's important right now to use your voice. Your voice is powerful and you have a right to use it. And we have to unlearn these conscious and subconscious messages that we've been getting about not using your voice. So what are we going to sit with this? Like, where in your life are you saying yes that you should be saying no? Think about that.
And what might change just this week if you chose differently? What might you gain or lose maybe?
Yeah. And that no is not a rejection. It's a redirection, right? And saying no to someone is saying yes to yourself sometimes. So think about that when you're sitting with the discomfort of saying no. Yeah. Any other last note?
no. But if you listen to this episode and you do say no, we would love to hear that comment, how that felt for you. Because I think, we keep coming back to these themes of just empowerment, right? Like every time we understand something more about ourselves, we use our voice, we're really taking back your power and things of that nature. So we would love to hear your stories. But on that note, I think we're good, and good luck with, saying
Saying no.
Okay. Take care until next time.